Jake, an 18-year-old with blonde hair and an athletic build, was navigating his first year of college in Ohio, feeling somewhat lost and alone. To pass the time and maybe make some new connections, he tried out a dating app. That's where he met Connor, a 30-year-old with a muscular, hairy build who exuded a warm smile and undeniable charisma. After exchanging messages for a few days, Connor invited him to meet up at a cozy cafe in town, and feeling curious and excited, Jake accepted. When they met, the chemistry was instant. Connor's natural confidence and engaging personality made Jake feel at ease despite their age difference. They talked for hours, and Jake found himself drawn to Connor's maturity and the attentiveness that made him feel truly seen. By the end of the night, Connor insisted on walking Jake to his car, which left a lasting impression on him. Driving home, Jake couldn't help but smile as he thought about the connection they had shared. Jake lay awake that night, replaying every moment in his mind, filled with a sense of excitement and curiosity. This felt like the beginning of something genuine, something he hadn't expected but was ready to explore. The idea of seeing Connor again filled him with anticipation, and he knew he'd be thrilled if Connor reached out. The next day, Jake decided he'd wait to see if Connor would message him, feeling a mixture of hope and excitement. Little did he know, this was the beginning of a journey that would be full of intense emotions and unexpected turns. The next morning, as Jake relived the memory of their date, he received a message from Connor, inviting him over to his place that evening. Jake's heart raced. The idea of being alone with Connor in a more private setting made him both nervous and excited. Despite the flutter of nerves, Jake's curiosity and attraction to Connor won, and he accepted the invitation. That night, he arrived at Connor's stylish home, which reflected the older man's mature, refined taste. Connor greeted him warmly, and they settled into the living room, picking up their conversation with ease. Jake couldn't ignore the palpable chemistry between them, intensified by Connor's steady gaze that seemed to see right through him, sparking both excitement and vulnerability. Connor soon suggested they move to a cozier room, and Jake felt a thrilling mix of anticipation and nervousness. The intimacy of the moment and Connor's gentle attention made him feel both safe and exhilarated. He found himself getting swept up in Connor's warmth and charm, savoring the connection they were building. On the drive home, Jake replayed the evening's events with a quiet smile. For him, this encounter was more than just a casual date. It felt like the beginning of something meaningful. He was eager to see where this new relationship would lead and looked forward to their next meeting. As he settled into bed, Jake couldn't help but feel he'd found something special. Connor seemed genuine and caring, and he was ready to see what their future together might hold. After their second date, Jake and Connor started seeing each other regularly, growing closer with each encounter. Jake found himself increasingly drawn to Connor, feeling a connection that went beyond mere attraction. Each conversation revealed new layers of Connor's life, stories of his past, and insights into his personality. Jake cherished these moments, feeling that he was beginning to truly understand Connor. One evening, Connor invited Jake over for dinner. He had prepared a home-cooked meal, and the ambiance was filled with warmth and intimacy. They laughed, shared stories, and even talked about their dreams for the future. Jake's heart raced with excitement and hope as he felt a deep bond forming between them, one that felt honest and real. The night continued, and the connection between them grew even stronger. Connor's attentiveness made Jake feel safe and valued, heightening the emotional intensity of the evening. Jake was beginning to fall for him, believing that this could be the start of something lasting. As Jake started spending more time at Connor's place, their connection only seemed to deepen. He imagined a future with Connor, one filled with laughter, love, and shared dreams. The thought filled him with happiness, and he was eager to see where their journey together would go. For Jake, this relationship felt like a new beginning. He was thrilled by the bond they shared and felt ready to embrace whatever the future held for them. As weeks passed, Jake found himself growing more comfortable and trusting with Connor. The relationship felt serious, and he believed he was part of something special. During a casual conversation, Connor mentioned past dating experiences, downplaying them as part of his history. Jake, slightly curious, asked a bit more, and Connor shared that he'd met a few people through dating apps before. Jake dismissed it at first, telling himself it was all in the past. He trusted Connor and wanted to believe that what they had was unique. But as he replayed the conversation later, he couldn't shake a small feeling of unease. Deep down, Jake hoped he wasn't just one of many. Still, Connor's warmth and affection continued to reassure him. Jake believed in the bond they were building and tried to ignore his doubts, focusing instead on the special moments they shared. He knew Connor had a past, but he was willing to trust that their relationship was something different. Each time they were together, Connor's attention and kindness made Jake feel cherished, dispelling his uncertainties. Despite the occasional flicker of doubt, he was happy, choosing to live in the moment with the man he was growing to love. For Jake, every moment together reaffirmed the depth of his feelings for Connor. He was fully invested, willing to see where this path would lead them. As time went on, Jake and Connor became even closer, with each encounter bringing them a step deeper into their relationship. One weekend, Connor invited Jake to stay over, marking a significant milestone in their journey together. For Jake, this was a symbol of Connor's commitment, and he was thrilled to spend more time in Connor's world. Throughout the weekend, they shared meals, talked about their goals, and even opened up about insecurities and fears. Connor's attention reassured Jake that he was valued, making him feel like he was an essential part of Connor's life. He allowed himself to believe in a future with Connor, feeling secure in the love he thought they shared. Despite occasional insecurities, Jake was determined to trust in the bond they were building. He told himself that what they had was genuine, ignoring the small voice of doubt that occasionally surfaced. Being with Connor made him feel alive, and he was eager to embrace whatever lay ahead for them. Jake's admiration for Connor only grew, and he found himself imagining a future filled with happiness and companionship. Each day with Connor felt like a step closer to the life he dreamed of. In his heart, Jake knew he was falling deeply, ready to take on whatever challenges they might face together. As their relationship continued, Jake noticed subtle changes that began to plant seeds of doubt. One night, while they were at Connor's place, he noticed Connor's phone lighting up repeatedly with messages. Connor seemed uneasy and quickly put the phone away when Jake glanced over. Jake tried to dismiss his feelings of unease, but the moment left him unsettled. Another day, as they walked together, someone greeted Connor warmly. When Jake asked who it was, Connor brushed it off, saying it was just an acquaintance from the gym. Jake wanted to believe him, but the little incidents were starting to add up. leaving him with a nagging feeling of uncertainty. He tried to focus on the positive aspects of their relationship, convincing himself that Connor's active social life shouldn't be cause for concern. But with each new interaction, the doubts grew, gnawing away at the trust he'd worked so hard to build. Though he hadn't found any concrete reason to worry, Jake couldn't shake the sense that something wasn't quite right. He wanted to confront Connor, but he was afraid of damaging the connection they shared. For now, Jake held on to his faith in the relationship, even as a small part of him began to brace for disappointment. For weeks, Jake's unease had been building, but he tried to ignore it, pushing down the doubts that kept creeping up. He desperately wanted to trust Connor, to believe that the connection they shared was real. Connor's attention, his charm, and the warmth he showed made it easy for Jake to overlook the small, unsettling signs. But those signs were becoming harder to dismiss. Whenever he caught Connor hurriedly putting away his phone or saw him nervously glancing around when they were out, the unease in Jake's chest only grew stronger. One evening, they were at Connor's place, sharing a meal and talking about their week. Connor seemed relaxed, laughing and talking as usual. But Jake felt a sense of tension that he couldn't quite put his finger on. While Connor excused himself to take a call in another room, Jake noticed his phone lighting up on the table. He hesitated, feeling a surge of guilt at the idea of looking through it, but his curiosity and growing suspicion got the best of him. As he reached for the phone, his heart pounded. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. There, in the app where they'd first connected, Connor had active chats with multiple men. He could see Connor's flirtatious messages, invitations to meet up, and even recent photos he had sent. Each conversation seemed to hold a different part of Connor, showing Jake a side of him that was deeply disheartening. The warmth that Connor had shown him, the attentiveness, the genuine seeming care, it was all being shared with other men. Jake felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him, the reality he thought he'd built with Connor shattering into pieces. Connor returned to the room, and Jake's expression must have given him away. Connor paused, his eyes flicking to the phone in Jake's hand before he quickly tried to explain. But Jake was past explanations. The betrayal he felt was overwhelming, an ache that reached deep into his chest and wouldn't let go. He demanded to know the truth, and Connor admitted, with a dismissive tone, that he enjoyed meeting people and didn't see harm in continuing to meet others. Even while seeing Jake, the words stung, cutting through Jake's heart like a blade. Here he was, vulnerable and truly invested in what they had, while Connor had been treating him as just another option. The realization of this betrayal left Jake speechless, his mind swirling with disbelief. He had given so much of himself, had trusted Connor completely, only to find out he had been one of many. The intensity of the pain was almost unbearable, and for a moment he didn't know if he would ever recover from this. Seeing no way to stay in the same room with Connor, Jake got up and left, each step feeling like it was carrying him away from a dream turned nightmare. He felt hollow, his mind replaying the happy memories they had shared, now tainted by the painful truth. In the weeks that followed his discovery, Jake felt like a shell of himself. The betrayal had left him hollow, his thoughts haunted by memories of Connor and the trust he had so freely given. Every time he replayed their moments together, he felt both anger and an overwhelming sense of loss. He could barely sleep, his mind replaying their time together in painful fragments. Connor's smile, his laugh, the way he had made Jake feel special. It was all tainted now, woven with the sting of deception. As Jake drifted through his days, going through the motions of work and class, he found it hard to recognize himself. He had always been strong, independent, and careful with his heart. But with Connor, he had let himself believe in something real, only to be shattered by the realization that he had been just one of many. His friends noticed the change in him, urging him to talk, to open up. But Jake found it too painful to share. He had loved Connor deeply and felt ashamed to admit that he had been deceived. One evening, after avoiding Connor's attempts to reach out, Jake received another message. Connor was persistent, claiming he wanted to explain, to make things right. Against his better judgment, Jake decided he needed to see Connor one last time. Maybe he could find closure, or perhaps just the strength to finally let go. They agreed to meet at the same cafe where they had shared so many intimate conversations, now a painful reminder of what had once felt like love. When Jake arrived, Connor was already there, looking anxious and slightly disheveled. As Jake approached, he could see the usual charm in Connor's face replaced by something more vulnerable. But Jake had no sympathy left. He sat down, meeting Connor's gaze with a cold intensity that surprised even himself. Connor stammered, trying to find the right words, but Jake cut him off, demanding honesty. He wanted to know why, after everything, Connor had chosen to betray him. Connor's expression shifted, revealing a side Jake hadn't seen before, one of self-justification. He explained that he had been upfront about seeing other people, and that Jake had misinterpreted their connection. He claimed that he hadn't meant to hurt Jake, but felt that he had the right to explore his options, as if Jake's love had been nothing more than an item on a checklist. Each word felt like a slap, deepening the wound and confirming the worst of Jake's fears. He had been used. Jake's vision blurred with tears, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and profound sadness. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He had loved Connor with everything he had, and in return, he was being reduced to a mere convenience. As he stood to leave, Connor grabbed his arm, a flicker of genuine regret crossing his face, but it was too late. Jake pulled away, his voice steady as he told Connor that he was done, that he would never allow himself to be treated as less than he deserved. But as Jake turned to walk away, he felt the crushing weight of what he was leaving behind. Not just Connor, but the dreams and the future he had imagined with him. He felt himself breaking down, struggling to hold back the flood of emotion that threatened to consume him. Jake had wanted so badly for things to work, for Connor to be the man he had believed him to be, but the reality was too painful to accept. The walk home was a blur, every step heavy with heartbreak. Alone in his room that night, Jake collapsed onto his bed, the full weight of the betrayal hitting him like a tidal wave. He cried himself to sleep, feeling emptier than he ever had before. The days that followed were no better. He avoided his friends, too ashamed to admit how deeply he had fallen for someone so undeserving. He felt himself slipping into a void, struggling to find a reason to keep going. Weeks passed, and although the pain remained, Jake started to reclaim pieces of himself, slowly building the strength to move forward. Connor was gone, but the scars he left would stay with Jake, a reminder of the love he had given and the betrayal he had endured. He was no longer the same person, but he knew he had survived. And that, in itself, was something he could hold on to. Did you enjoy the story? Stories like this one remind us of how important it is to recognize our own worth and never settle for less than we deserve. How many times have we trusted someone who seemed perfect but ended up letting us down? Or placed our happiness in someone else's hands only to realize that we're the ones responsible for it? Experiences like these, as painful as they may be, often teach us valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and setting boundaries. Share in the comments if you've ever gone through something similar, or if you have a story you'd like to see featured here. After all, sometimes our own experiences can inspire others to move forward with strength and self-awareness. Who knows? Maybe your story will be the next one we bring to life. We're looking forward to hearing from you.